One of the defining characteristics of a banana republic is their tradition of an incoming administration stalking the previous one in court in an attempt to imprison them or otherwise prevent them from ever returning to power. Our stalwart defenders of free speech and democracy over at MSNBC, they're currently entertaining fantasies of doing just that to former President Trump. Manhattan DA and longtime political adversary Cy Vance is still investigating him, fishing for something, anything, just to get him on. Former special counsel Robert Mueller's pit bull, Russia hoaxer and current MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann, talked about this very thing with mental midget Nicole Wallace and Bloomberg senior opinion columnist Tim O'Brien. The interview indulges the fantasies of their smallish but fanatical audience that even now Trump might be indicted on something, doesn't matter what, and either extradited from Florida to New York for trial, or, if Florida Governor Ron DeSantis refuses to comply, effectively imprisoned within that state. There are worse things that could happen to a person. Now, mind you, they're fantasizing about this when there is no specific crime being alleged against the former president. They smile, they laugh, they do just about everything but rub their hands together with glee. And the excuse they use to talk about this is a story in Politico that says, quote, law enforcement officials in Palm Beach County, Florida have actively prepared for the possibility that Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance could indict former President Donald Trump while he's at Mar-a-Lago, according to two high-ranking county officials involved in planning sessions, end quote. The story anticipates possible thorny extradition issues that could arise if he were indicted. Here's a clip from the interview, and notice it's labeled as breaking news.
I mean, look, I don't have any of the legal expertise, but my political antenna has been watching DeSantis, and if he won't protect Floridians from COVID, there's no way he's going to turn over Donald Trump to the Manhattan DA. I wonder if you can speak to what that means for Donald Trump. Does he have to stay in Florida and risk being arrested if he leaves the state?
This happens all the time in foreign countries where essentially you have people who are sort of, imprisoned in a country. Here, Donald Trump would be imprisoned in Florida.
That's your objective news media. Now, you'd think the media would have the sense to ignore the topic of DeSantis and COVID, especially when their own governors have failed so miserably. But Nicole Wallace accuses DeSantis of not protecting his constituents from COVID. To make that statement, she's got to ignore the fact that his state has done nearly 100% better than her own state of New York with COVID, and that's despite Florida having the highest percentage of people over 65. In other words, people more vulnerable to the virus. Clearly, facts and objectivity are not her priority. As the very execrable Washington, I call him compost, puts it, democracy dies in darkness. Well, our media sure has been hard at work turning out all the lights. But Nicole Wallace just can't help herself. She fantasizes about a cartoon-like image of DeSantis, like smuggling, blonde-headed Donald Trump out of Mar-a-Lago, adding, but what does this mean, practically speaking? Well, here's what it means. What it means is that Trump derangement syndrome has destroyed all her brain cells, maybe except the ones that blink her eyes and move her mouth. But Weissmann answers her question saying it could get quite complicated. In other words, he has to speak very, very slowly, so Nicole Wallace will perhaps understand. He says there's a law that imposes a duty on the Florida governor to extradite, but doesn't require this. The governor also has the right to investigate the extradition papers. Weissmann says that if Trump and DeSantis wanted to delay an extradition, there might be ways to do that. Again, they're musing about this when there are no criminal allegations against Donald Trump. Weissmann also says that Florida would play games with extradition at its peril, because someday it might need another state's cooperation to extradite someone back to Florida to stand trial. Tim O'Brien, Nicole Wallace's other guest in this panel, added that the investigation into Donald Trump is a multifaceted financial fraud investigation involving tax fraud, accounting fraud, and a number of other illegalities. He thinks that these are some of the minor infractions that they could probably get Trump on. He thinks the fact that they've gone this far down the tree, maybe they're shaking the family members of Trump's chief financial officer, and that's a very strong indicator of just how hardcore they are about this. Frankly, I say it shows how deep they have to fish. He also had this to say.
I think if it gets to the point of an extradition, it means they're seeking to arrest him and he's resisting arrest. And then it will become a carnival, undoubtedly, and tragicomic as everything is surrounding Trump, because I don't think he'll have any hesitation to try to encourage his supporters to surround Mar-a-Lago to keep the police at bay.
He continues on by saying that Trump is broadly loathed both in Manhattan and Palm Beach. He might want to add his own name to the list of those who are broadly loathed, at least among those who care anything about journalistic talent or integrity. But I actually have to hand it to Andrew Weissman for being honest about what's really going on with the investigation out of New York. Quote, "This is not so much an investigation directly at Trump," he clarifies. "It's rather focused on getting Weisselberg to flip." Now that's Trump's financial person. He explains that it would be hard to show that even if Trump made the payments, that he understood that it wasn't going to be declared on the recipient's tax forms. But since it would be very damaging to the Weisselbergs, it shows they're still really trying to get Weisselberg to flip. He says they're a ways away from getting Donald Trump. Now, getting associates to flip in order to bring in the big fish is something that Weissman knows all about. Weissman is telling us right here what a fishing expedition this is, a quest to find something, anything, to indict Donald Trump on before the 2024 campaign. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll comment and subscribe to the channel below and click the notification bell for more videos. Also, check us out on Rumble. And if you want more of my news analysis and commentary, sign up for my newsletter at MikeHuckabee.com. It's completely free. You pay nothing for it. And if you're in the mood for some great entertainment, check out our second channel, Huckabee's Jukebox. That's it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.